Hello and a very good morning to all our listeners. Welcome to our podcast. Today we'll be discussing the topic, can anyone become a person under international law? The main question we will explore is why state can do things that individuals or organizations cannot, such as establishing diplomatic relations and declaring war. Joining me today are three panelists. First is Ms. Sanizan, an expert in international law. And second is Ms. Adlina, a diplomat who will share perspective from the viewpoint of state. And lastly is Ms. Huda, a representative of the United Nations. Without further ado, let us begin our discussion. My first question is from Ms. Sanizan. What is meant by international legal personality?
Thank you, moderator, for the questions, and good morning, everyone. For me, the easiest way to understand international legal personality is by asking who is actually recognized to act under international law. So, to answer these questions, international legal personality refers to entities that are recognized under international law as having rights, duties, and the capacities to act the international level. This means that such entities are not only subject to international law but are also to perform certain functions that are recognized by that law. For example, states have the most complete forms of international legal personality because they are able to enter into international agreements, establish diplomatic, and become members of international organizations. In certain situations, individuals can also be held directly accountable under international law. This means that if persons commit serious crimes such as genocides or war crimes, they can be prosecuted before international courts. However, the role of individual remains limited, that they do not have the same rights and power as the states. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanizan, for the explanation. To summarize, international legal personality refers to the ability of an entity to process right and obligation under international law. However, not all illegal persons have the same powers. Now, my next question goes to Ms. Alpina. What are the difference in capacity between state, individuals, and international organizations?
That's a great question, moderator. So, of course, the three have individual, state, and international organization have a different. When we talk about state, their capacity is rooted in sovereignty. They control territory, enforce law, and command military and economic resources that have power in action, but of course they are limited by resource and international law. Now, shifting to individual, the strength lies in influence rather than enforcement. Think activities, thinker, or leader, they mobilize movement and influence public opinion. For example, we can see a person like Greta Thunberg, the activist of Global Zoom Flotilla. We can see how powerful was her voice, but they don't have army or legal authority. And lastly, international organizations, they are unique because they derive legitimacy from their membership country, like the United Nations, WHO, ASEAN. They coordinate, set norms, and amplify cooperation. But here the catch, they rely on state to enforce decisions, so their capacity is more about persuasion and coordination than coercion. So I will pass back to moderator.
Thank you, Ms. Adlina, for the clear explanation. Next, I would like to ask Ms. Huda, and my question is, what about international organizations such as the United Nations?
Thank you, moderator. International organizations such as the United Nations are also recognized as legal person under international law. However, they do not have the same powers as states. Unlike states, international organizations do not have their own territory, population, or sovereign, but their powers come from the treaties that create them. For example, the United Nations can make agreements with states, join international discussion, and help solve international problems. However, it cannot act as a sovereign state. So, therefore, international organizations have a legal personality, but their legal capacity is more limited than states. That's all from me.
Thank you, Ms. Huda. In summary, international organizations such as the United Nations are recognized as a legal person under international law. However, unlike states, their powers derive from the territories that establish them are therefore more limited. Thank you to all the panelists for your valuable explanation and insight regarding international legal personality and the different capacity of a legal person under international law. We will now move on to the second part of our discussion, where we will examine real-world example and case related to this topic. Stay with us.
Hello everyone and welcome back to our podcast. So now I will serving you guys as your moderator. Here now with me is Miss Shanizan, expert in international law, Miss Haina, a diplomat, and Miss Huda, a representative of the United Nations. Now let us examine some example and case related to today's topic. Can anyone become a person under international law? So I would like to go with Miss Shanizan first. Miss Shanizan, what are the requirements for becoming a state under international law?
So, to answer these questions, I would like to refer to the Montevideo Conventions of 1933, which is often used as a key reference in the determining whether an entity can be considered as a state or not. According to the Montevideo Conventions, there are four main criteria. The first one is permanent populations, meaning a group of who reside within the entity. Second, a defined territory, although the exact borders may sometimes still be disputed. The third is a government that is capable of governing and enforcing laws. And fourth, the capacity to enter into international relations with other states. These four criteria form an important basis in determining and statehood of an entity under international law. However, in today's reality, recognitions by other states also often influences whether an entity is accepted as a member of international community.
Thank you, Ms. Shanizan, for your explanation are clear and easy to recall. In short, the Montevideo Convention helps us to understand the basic requirement of statehood. Now, to emphasize this point further, Ms. Huda, could you provide a real-world example?
One example that is frequently discussed is about Palestine. Palestine is a permanent population, a government, and a defined territory. So these are some of the requirements stated in the Montevideo Convention. Palestine is also recognized by many countries and has observed status in the United Nations. So, however, some countries still do not recognize Palestine as a sovereign state. Because of this, its statushood remains a topic in the United Nations.
So, from Ms. Huda's explanation, we can see that Palestine shows that the state would depend not only on meeting the criteria, but also on gaining recognition from the international community. Thank you for your insightful explanation, Ms. Huda. Before we conclude today's podcast, I would like to invite each panelist to provide a brief closing remark. Start from Ms. Shanizan.
Thank you, moderator. So, from my perspective, not all entities actually have the same international legal personality. States possess the most complete capacity due to their sovereignty and wide range of functions at the international level. Meanwhile, international organizations and individuals only have limited capacities based on their specific roles and functions.
So, what about Ms. Huda?
In conclusion, international organizations are important subject of international law. Although their powers are more limited than states, they still play an important role in the promoting cooperation and solving international issues.
That's all. So, lastly, we will go with Ms. Haina.
Okay, for my conclusion is not a legal person under international law. In conclusion, not all legal person under international law possess the same level of authority or capacity. States remain the primary subject because they sovereign, while individuals and international organizations have more specialist and limited roles. Understanding this distinction allows us to appreciate the complexity of the international legal system.
Thank you for all panelists for the conclusion. And I would love to conclude that the answer to the question, can anyone become a person under international law is yes. But not all legal persons have the same level of international legal capacity. International legal personality allow entities to have right and obligation, but extent depend on the type of entity. State become a primary, while international organizations have a limited capacity. Individuals are recognized through human rights and responsibility. I would like to thank all the panelists here for giving us our new knowledge that we might not know therefore. Then I would like to thank you to all listeners here for joining our podcast here. Thank you for all the support. We will have to end the podcast. Thank you all for supporting us. Bye-bye. Bye.